The damage has been done. The parents of terminally ill baby Charlie Gard speak out after deciding to end the legal fight to keep their son alive.
Big hurdles for the pro-life provisions in the Senate health care bill. I'm Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. I'll tell you why coming up.
Nothing to hide. The president's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner, heads to Capitol Hill to answer questions about the Russian investigation. And youth unite. Thousands gather in our nation's capital to celebrate World Youth Day. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, July 24th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The parents of critically ill baby Charlie Gard are dropping their legal bid to bring him to the United States for experimental treatment. This comes after new medical tests show the window of opportunity to help Charlie is over. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby joins us with the details. Wyatt?
Lauren, Charlie Gard's parents, Connie and Chris, say they only wanted to give their 11-month-old baby boy a chance at life. But Chris says too much time was spent in court battles trying to get permission to move Charlie. Now he says it's time to say goodbye.
To Charlie, we say, Mummy and Daddy, we love you so much. We always have and we always will, and we are so sorry that we couldn't save you. Sweet dreams, baby. Sleep tight, our beautiful little boy. We love you.
In an emotional statement outside of London's High Court, Chris Gard says it's time to let Charlie go and be with the angels. The decision came after a fresh round of medical tests on Charlie, showing he now has irreversible muscular damage and that the new treatment wouldn't help.
This is about a sweet, gorgeous, innocent little boy who was born with a rare disease, who had a real, genuine chance at life, and a family who love him so very dearly, and that's why we fought so hard for him.
Chris Gard and Connie Yates were hoping to send Charlie to America, where specialists at Columbia University believed treatment was worth a try. But doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London had argued that the treatment wouldn't help and could cause the child pain, so they challenged the parents. The case won international attention after Charlie's parents received support from Pope Francis and President Donald Trump.
Charlie has supporters everywhere, by the way.
A group of pro-life Americans, like Presbyterian pastor Patrick Mahoney, traveled to London as a sign of support.
This once again affirmed the parents were right, not the courts, not the government bureaucrats. And we are now praying, as Connie said, and it resonated with me, we pray his life would not be in vain.
Mahoney also tells me that Charlie has been baptized, and many Christian leaders have prayed over the infant. And tonight, Pope Francis is speaking out. He says he is praying for Charlie and his parents and feels especially close to them at this time of suffering. The Holy Father is also asking us to unite in prayer that they may find God's consolation and love. Lauren?
Wyatt, I understand the doctors and staff at the London hospital where Charlie is on life support are receiving death threats.
That's right, Lauren. We've learned the staff have received thousands of threats of all kinds over the past few months. They're now calling for some level of civility. Charlie's father, Chris, is leading by example. He's thanking the nurses and staff for keeping Charlie comfortable and stable for so long. Lauren?
Such a tragic story. Thank you. Wyatt Goolsby reporting. Joining us now is Catherine Glenn Foster, President and CEO of Americans United for Life. She is joining us now from London. You were in the courtroom today. Tell me what that was like.
It was an absolutely heartbreaking experience. There were people crying, sobbing throughout the hearing today, and particularly as Connie was speaking and sharing her heart and just the experience that they've been through these last few months. It was an emotional time in court today.
You've been with the parents, you've seen Charlie yourself. What has it been like to be by their side, and how are they holding up?
They are doing as any parents would be at this juncture. It is incredibly difficult for them. They have been fighting for their son, for his life, and to be told finally that it is now too late, that due to delays in treatment, there's no further chance for him. It is absolutely heartbreaking for any parent to hear, and absolutely for Connie and Chris, who are two of the most loving parents I have ever met.
Are they even thinking about this battle and what other people can learn from this?
They are. They have such courage. They already are thinking along those lines. They are focused on Charlie and want to spend these last few hours, maybe days with him, but just spending all that precious time with their son. But they know that when their time with him here on earth is over, their plan is to be able to start a foundation and help other parents whose children are in the same situation, because it is not acceptable that he was not able to receive the care that they knew he needed. In the end, they knew best.
Are they angry?
I don't feel anger coming from them, and I don't feel anger coming from any of their supporters either. I feel sadness, and certainly they they want his life to have meant something. Obviously, it did to them, but to mean something beyond his short time here on earth. And they do want to make sure that that his life will mean something to other families as well. As they said in court, he has brought the international community together, and in the future, in coming years, he will help other children. His life will help other children in that same situation and help them to get that care that they deserve.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please give our best to Connie and Chris. Catherine Glenn Foster, President and CEO of Americans United for Life. Pro-life provisions in the Senate healthcare bill hit a big snag, and this could complicate defunding Planned Parenthood. But pro-life groups tell us there is a fix. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi has the latest. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. It all comes down to Senate rules. Republicans are using a special process called reconciliation to pass their health care bill. It requires just a simple majority, not the usual 60 votes. But the pro-life provisions in this bill may break Senate rules.
The various drafts of the Republican health care bill would strip Medicaid funds from Planned Parenthood for 1 year and ban tax credits from covering abortion. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, the top Democrat on the Budget Committee, says those pro-life provisions will need an all but impossible 60 votes. That's based on the initial assessment of the Senate rule keeper, who safeguards the process of lawmaking in the chamber. But the spokesman for Republicans on the Budget Committee tells News Nightly this is not a formal ruling. Formal action is only taken when the legislation is actually under consideration on the floor of the Senate. Material can be rewritten before the bill comes to the floor. The Susan B. Anthony List pro-life lobby group is hopeful. Its president, Marjorie Dannenfelser, says we have been reassured the problem can be fixed, so are in a tentative support mode still. Another pro-life lobby group tells us they're encouraging lawmakers to tweak the pro-life language so it satisfies Senate rules.
That pro-life lobby group, the Family Research Council, is a big player on this debate. They tell me they're very disappointed that the defunding of Planned Parenthood is reaching procedural hurdles this time around when it was allowed to pass back in 2015. Lauren, you may remember President Barack Obama vetoed that Republican health care bill.
What other options do Republicans have besides changing some of the language, Jason?
Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, says Vice President Mike Pence can just ignore the rules interpretation, allowing the pro-life provisions to be added to the health care bill and pass with just a simple majority.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi, thank you. Jared Kushner denies the Trump campaign colluded with Russia in the 2016 election. The president's son-in-law and senior advisor says he had nothing to hide. Today, Kushner met behind closed doors with the Senate Intelligence Committee as they continued their Russian probe. Correspondent Mark Irons reports from the White House. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. Jared Kushner says his interview with Senate investigators went great. He becomes the first member of the president's inner circle to face questions from lawmakers.
Ahead of his meeting with Senate investigators, Kushner released an 11-page statement detailing 4 contacts with Russians during the Trump campaign and transition. After his closed-door meeting on the Hill, Kushner made public remarks here at the White House.
Let me be very clear. I did not collude with Russia, nor do I know of anyone else in the campaign who did so. I had no improper contacts. I have not relied on Russian funds for my businesses. And I have been fully transparent in providing all requested information.
In Kushner's written statement, he says Donald Trump Jr. invited him to a June 2016 meeting with a Russian-American lawyer at Trump Tower. Kushner says the meeting was a waste of time and the lawyer was discussing the issue of Americans being able to adopt Russian children. Kushner goes on to say, no part of the meeting I attended included anything about the campaign. There was no follow-up to the meeting that I was aware of. I do not recall how many people were there or their names, and I have no knowledge of any documents being offered or accepted. Kushner also says he met with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak at Trump Tower in December to discuss policy in Syria, but denies reports that he proposed an ongoing secret back channel of communication with Moscow during that meeting.
Here at the White House, Kushner went on to say Donald Trump had a better message and ran a smarter campaign, and that is why he won. He was implying that Russian interference was not a factor in Trump's victory. Lauren.
I understand President may sign a bill that sanctions Russia, Mark?
That's right. The legislation is aimed at punishing Moscow for meddling in the presidential election and its military aggression in Ukraine and Syria. The White House has indicated the president would sign the bill, and Congress could send that bill to his desk sometime this week.
Correspondent Mark Irons at the White House. Thank you, Mark. House and Senate Democrats travel outside the Beltway and into Berryville, Virginia, to offer a retooled message and a new slogan called A Better Deal.
We are here today to tell the people of Berryville and the working people of America, someone has your back.
Democrats are rebranding themselves ahead of the 2018 midterm elections. Their location today was deliberate. It was inside a district Republicans now hold. Democrats hope to take the seat next year. 10 people are dead after a boiling hot tractor trailer was found packed with immigrants in San Antonio, Texas. Prosecutors have now charged the driver, who could face the death penalty. Sunday morning, 8 undocumented immigrants were found dead inside the truck about 150 miles away from Mexico. Since then, 2 people who were hospitalized have died. Officials fear the death toll could rise because nearly 20 others are in dire condition.
People were in that trailer without any signs of any type of water, so you're looking at a lot of heat stroke, a lot of dehydration.
This case is one of the deadliest human trafficking cases in recent history. At least some of those in the truck were from Mexico and Guatemala. A suicide bomber targets a group of police in Pakistan, killing at least 26 people and injuring 50 more. The officers were guarding a demolition site in Lahore when the suspect approached on a motorcycle. The powerful blast wounded not only police, but several bystanders. An outlawed militant group claimed responsibility for the bombing. The violence in Pakistan follows an earlier attack in neighboring Afghanistan. In that case, the Taliban's suicide bomber killed 24 people and injured 40 more in a Kabul neighborhood. That's where prominent politicians live. It's making people question the government's ability to protect Afghanistan's capital. The president of the Philippines calls for lawmakers there to reinstate the death penalty in this majority Catholic country. It's part of his war on drugs.
You harm the children in whose hands the future of this republic is entrusted, and I will hound you to the very gates of hell.
In his annual State of the Nation address, Duterte said he would not back down, even if that meant public criticism or legal prosecution. He said in the Philippines, the only way to get even is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. A sign of hope in the Nineveh Plain in Iraq. 15 statues of Our Lady are being delivered to replace ones destroyed by ISIS. During our trip to Iraq, this is what we saw: damaged statues of Mary and others in churches. A Vatican news agency says a French Catholic group sent 15 statues of the Virgin of Lourdes to Erbil, Iraq. Christians in that region have gained strength from Our Lady of Lourdes during their exile. Up next, prayers for peace.
A Jerusalem.
The Holy Father prays for an end to violence in Jerusalem. And World Youth Day Unite, how young Catholics are trying to build on an authentic communion. Tonight, a diplomatic standoff between Jordan and Israel after 2 Jordanians are killed by an Israeli security guard. It happened after the 2 attacked the guard at Israel's embassy in Jordan. Jordan is heavily involved in efforts to defuse a crisis over the holy site, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Last week, Arab gunsmen there killed 2 Israeli policemen. 3 Palestinians were killed in a street clash, and a Palestinian fatally stabbed 3 members of an Israeli family. During his weekly Angelus address, Pope Francis appealed for moderation in dialogue in Jerusalem after all of the violence.
Seguo con trepidazione le gravi tensioni e le violenze di questi giorni.
The Holy Father says he is following the tensions and violence closely. Israeli authorities have imposed new security at the holy site. Here to discuss the recent violence in Israel is Father Bernardo Cervalera, editor-in-chief of Asia News. Father, the new escalation of violence is tied to the access of the holy sites. Jerusalem is a holy city for 3 religions. What's happening? How can these 3 religions work together?
On one end, there are the problems of security for Israel because more than 1 week ago, some Arab Israeli came out from the mosque and they killed 2 Israeli soldiers. Then Israel has put this metal detector to control the entrance and the exit of the Palestinians. But to do this, they have changed practically. They have intervened in the status quo of the holy sites in Jerusalem. The status quo is the law put by the Ottoman Empire, and that the state of Israel should abide about this.
Well, there's been no dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians recently. Why is that?
Because there is the problem of the Israeli settlement. The dialogue between Israel and Palestine can go on because the Palestinians, they ask to stop the Israeli settlement. Instead, in these perhaps 10 years and more, the Israeli settlement have grown and have multiplied, and so there is more and more less hope for a Palestinian country, a Palestinian state, because the land is occupied by Israel.
President Trump says the peace process is a very big priority for him. What needs to happen to achieve peace?
To achieve peace, I think it is a long, long way. But first of all, I think Israel should give some hope to the Palestinians. So this means that the dialogue for a Palestinian state should restart. This is, for this reason, they should stop the Israeli settlement, and they should give some hope also to the Palestinian prisoners. Because they are in isolation, they are not allowed to meet relatives, and all these things. There should be some goodwill gesture by Israel, I think. So in this way, the dialogue can restart.
Father Bernardo Cervalera, thank you so much for joining us, editor-in-chief of Asia News.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Pope and the President learn about the spiritual connection between John Paul II and Ronald Reagan. A bond that changed history. That's how historians describe the relationship between John Paul II and Ronald Reagan. I recently spoke to the author of a new book who reveals new details about the spiritual connection between the Catholic Pope and the Protestant President. Joining us now is author and professor Paul Kenger. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks so much.
Tell us what you learned about the meeting in 1982 between President Reagan and Pope John Paul II that helped just set the course to defeating communism.
Yeah, so that was June 1982, so it was 35 years ago. And I mean, Reagan had wanted to meet John Paul II since he saw him go to Poland in June 1979 when Reagan was watching it on television back in his home in California. But so they finally got together June 1982. At that point, it was about a year after they were both shot. So everybody remembers that they were shot, right? But no, they were shot March 30th, 1981. and May 13th, 1981, 6 weeks apart. So they got together and they said that they believed, they met for about an hour at Vatican Library, one-on-one. They shared their mutual conviction and sense that God had spared their lives for a special purpose, which they believed was to work together to defeat atheistic Soviet communism.
You reveal new details about how Reagan was interested in the secrets of Fatima and the connections to JP2's shooting.
Yeah, that blew me away. I mean, I had no idea. I had written a book called God and Ronald Reagan back in 2004 before I converted to the Catholic Church, and I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of it at all. Reagan knew about Fatima. He received a one-on-one briefing on Fatima from Frank Shakespeare, the second ambassador to the Vatican, before he met with John Paul II in June 1987 in Rome. So that was 5 years in Rome after the first meeting together. And then this really shocked me, and this is embarrassing as a Reagan scholar. I didn't know this. Reagan actually gave a speech in Portugal in May 1985 where he mentioned the shooting of John Paul II, and this is in front of the whole Portuguese parliament, prime minister, and everyone. He mentioned the shooting of John Paul II, Mary, Fatima, the shrine in Fatima, the 3 shepherd children, and even said that in the power of the prayers of the children of Fatima lies more power than in all the great armies and statesmen of the world.
And this is a Protestant.
Reagan said that.
This is a Protestant, not a Catholic.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, it's an amazing statement that you would hear maybe even a Catholic make, but let alone a Protestant president. So I was shocked when I saw that.
What did you learn from the relationship between the two leaders? What, going forward, what is needed to make a difference in the world between religion and state?
Well, it's a good question, and I don't know that we'll have this kind of commonality of purpose again, or at least in a while. I mean, we just saw Pope Francis and Donald Trump, and I mean, they had some things they agreed on. They had some things that they disagreed on.
Right?
That's right. That's exactly right. They both would probably agree that radical Islam is a global threat in some form, right, persecuting Christians. But their worldview and how they would respond to that, could they come together with like a common plan? I don't know. I don't see it happening in the way that Reagan and John Paul II did. And then add this, Lauren. So imagine like Francis and Trump coming together a year after both being shot and almost bleeding to death, and then having this divine sense that they were saved for this common purpose. That kind of a bond, I mean, we probably won't see it again in our lifetimes. And that bond changed the world. It changed history.
Thank you so much, Paul Kenger, professor and author of A Pope and a President. I would highly, highly recommend the book.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Finally, tonight, young adults from around the country gather in our nation's capital for the weekend called World Youth Day Unite. The attendees heard inspiring talks, music, and worship. World Youth Day Unite is part of a national celebration held on the off years of the International World Youth Day. The next international event is going to be in Panama in 2019. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night, and God bless you.